Welcome to Backstage with Becca B with special guest Natalie Wisdom. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Backstage with Becca B. On today's episode, this Webster University grad made her Broadway debut in 2009 in Billy Elliot the Musical as a swing. She then went on to understudy the roles of Miss Wormwood and Miss Honey in the first national tour of Matilda. She's also been a swing in Groundhog Day the Musical, and if you've seen the national tour of Frozen, she's a swing in that too. Please welcome Natalie Wisdom. How are you?
I'm good. I'm here at my place in Astoria in Queens, New York. Yeah.
Nice. How's New York
quiet here? It's good. It's actually overall, I think it's doing much better with the pandemic and stuff. I think our numbers are down, but I haven't felt too affected because I'm in like a really quiet part of the neighborhood, and there's like a grocery store right down the street and a laundromat right down the street. So, I wasn't super affected anyway, but the outdoor dining is so interesting. There's so much more outdoor dining now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool.
I've seen pictures and it looks like a foreign country, so that's fun.
That's what someone else said, and I've only ever been to Paris, and it was like many years ago, but one person was like, oh yeah, it's like we're European now, and I was like, yeah, right, because there's so many of the people watching.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess I think the hardest thing about this is like not doing normal stuff right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and not having our day-to-day routine, and then I think also like the uncertainty of like how much longer and what will we have to be like permanently change, and what's gonna happen, like we like don't know any of it.
How long were you all told? Like a month?
Right. Oh yeah. Originally the day that we packed our trunks, it was supposed to be like a month. It was like, great, we'll see you in Salt Lake City. And then it got postponed a few more times, and so now they're looking at January, so we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed, but
hopefully.
Yeah.
I was telling someone, I'm thinking March or April, but
yeah. It's funny because I like keep trying to protect my heart. Like I'll be like when they said April, I was like, but probably July. And when they said July, I was like, but probably not till September. And then when they said September, I was like, January? Like I kept kind of like pushing it ahead in my mind so that I wasn't like so sad every time I heard we were going back. So, and now I just really don't know. But yeah, March would that would be about a year. So
you're smart to push back and not be like too optimistic, because I'm the optimistic one who's like, it's all gonna be great.
Well, I just get so crushed. I get so disappointed, and so I try to think, okay, well, hopefully, but I still hope. Like I'm always still hoping, hopefully, but probably not.
My first question is, have you always known you wanted to be a performer and like in theater, and how did you like find out that you wanted to be a performer?
That's such a great first question. I feel like I've pretty much always known. I mean, all of my memories, I remember wanting to sing and dance and do things. I remember what I believe is what happened is my dad brought home a VHS tape of The Sound of Music. And he always used to like, whenever he would, and I was probably like 5 at the time. So Gretel's age. So, yeah. But he always would say, cause I made it really clear to him when I was really little. I remember being like, I don't want to watch that. It doesn't have any kids in it. I don't want to watch that. It doesn't have any kids in it. Like I wanted to see like a TV show or a movie that I could relate to that had kids in it, cause I was a kid. Right. Yeah. And I remember he brought it home and he was like, Natalie, you're going to love this. It has lots of kids in it. And I was like, okay, great. And I had seen, singing before, and I had started dance classes already. And I remember like really gravitating towards tap specifically. Like I enjoyed tap from the very first lesson. Ballet was a love that I found a little bit later, and now I love ballet. But as a child, I mostly just liked tap, and ballet was just something I had to do. And I sang all the time around the house, and I loved learning songs, and I loved singing. So I was already like doing the things, but I didn't know that you could do it for your job. And I watched Sound of Music, and I just like fell in love with it. And I just was like, I want to be Gretel. And then I grew a little older, and I was like, I want to be Marta. And I grew a little older. You know what I mean? Like every year that I got older, I was like, and now I'm Brigitta's age. Like I just was like wanting to do Sound of Music. But it was when I don't remember how it came about it, if I asked or if they said, but my parents said, you know, this is their job, you know, this is what they do. And I was like, I want to do that. That's going to be my job. And I mean, it was like, that was it. It was over. Like, it was like, this is what I want to do. And I never let it go. Like but I went through stages, like when I was, in like probably second, third grade, I went through a tomboy stage, which is hilarious because I'm terrible at sports. But my friend up the street, her name was Carrie, and she had 3 brothers, and she was so tough and she was so cool, and she was a few years older than me, and she played all these sports. And I was like, I'm going to be an all-around athlete and a Broadway performer. And a Broadway. But like it never went away. Like it was like, and I'm going to be a professional basketball player, but like also a dancer. And I'd be like, you know, I'm going to play baseball, but like also be on Broadway. Like I'd be like, I'm going to do 2 things. But it was funny because it never went away. And then finally I realized, like, I do like to wear dresses. I'm not good at sports. I'm not going to be Carrie, and that's okay. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I finally came to that realization probably 4th, 5th grade, and then I got really girly.
Yeah.
But it never went away. And then I got into high school, and I watched all of my friends from like community theater shows, because I did like a lot of community theater around St. Louis, which is where I'm from. And a lot of them, I noticed a lot of them like started to change their minds. Like they'd be like, oh yeah, I want to be on Broadway when I grow up too. Or yeah, like, yeah, I want to be a performer when I grow up too. And I'd be like, yeah, me too. And then they'd be like, yeah, I think I'm going to go in psychology though. And I'd be like, oh, and they started to change their minds. And I remember thinking, maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I'll change. Like, I don't want to change my mind, but maybe that'll happen to me. And then all of a sudden it became this thing that might happen to me. Like I might change my mind about what I want to do.
You had it in your head.
But it didn't happen. I'd never changed my mind. And then my mom tried to talk me out of it. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She just was a little concerned about stability, which any parent would be concerned. And she was like, well, you know, you really aren't interested in nutrition. You know, maybe you could be a nutritionist. And I was like, Mom, I'm only interested in nutrition because I'm a dancer and I have to stay healthy. So she was like, okay, well, you really like, you know, English and language, and maybe, you know, you could be a news anchor, because then you'd still get to be on camera. I was like, Mom, that's not why I like to do this. I don't even care about like the attention. I really just want to be a performer and like sing and dance. And I don't like the news. She's like, okay. Like she kept kind of like trying to find things. And then she did really good, because after I said no to like everything, finally she was like, okay, great. So let's figure out. And then she did all this research, and like she knew how to get me my equity card, and she like looked up auditions, and she just was like, okay, if you're gonna do this, we're gonna do this. And it was very supportive. But that was after she was like, what about this, what about that, okay, you're sure, how do we make this happen? So she was super supportive, driving me around everywhere when I was in high school. And so that was really great.
That's so cute.
Yeah.
So did you do theater at the Muni in St. Louis?
I did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't in a long time now, but when I was a kid, I was a Muni kid.
Aw.
And then I was in the first year ever of Muni Teens, that was a while ago now. But yeah, so I remember I loved Muni Kids. It was like my favorite thing I did. Like the summers, like the memories I have with Muni every summer, like unbelievable memories there. And I was kind of 13, on the cusp of turning 14, and my voice had really matured, like ahead of my time. And I remember auditioning for Muni Kids, because even if you're in it the year before, you have to re-audition every year, you know? And I went to the audition, and I had done it, I think 2 years before that, or 3 years. And so it was my 4th summer. So, you know, I knew I had to do a good job, but I was like pretty sure I'd get in. And they were like, how old are you now? And I said, I'm 13. And one of the assistants was like, yeah, 13 going on 30. And I was like, and I was like, why did she say that? And then they called my mom, and they were like, so Natalie has matured a lot, and so we're not going to put her in Muni Kids this year, but we might be starting a teens group, because I guess I wasn't the only one of the first batch that had started to get too old.
Yeah.
And so that they started in Muni Teens, and we wore khaki shorts and t-shirts that said, meet me at the Muni in Forest Park, and it had a big tree on it. And they were like big t-shirts and like khaki shorts and white tennis shoes. And now it's like all black, and like they're all super, you know, sleek and fashionable. But that first summer we were like in khaki shorts. It was super fun. I just remember being like, we're figuring out what this is, because they were trying to make us different than the Muni Kids, but like, yeah, we weren't sure what it was yet. So that was really cool.
You're like, let's try this.
Yeah.
And now it's like a known theater in the theater community. Like no matter where you live, like if you follow theater at all, then you know, like, you know what Muni is.
Yeah, which is so cool. Yeah, I mean, it's, it's been around for hundreds of years. And I remember like being really excited about the people I got to work with there, like Leroy Reams and Phyllis Diller and Georgia Engel and like all these different actors that I had admired for so long. And I was like, I'm on stage with you. And of course they didn't know who I was. I was like one of 80 children. So
yeah, but
cool.
but I mean, yeah, you still got to do stuff there. So,
yeah.
Did you watch Annie too growing up? Because you mentioned, okay, I had to ask that because Annie was like my favorite thing.
All the time. And I actually thank you, quarantine. I just recently had like a reawakening of how good it is. And I've had a couple as an adult, but when you're a kid and you watch a movie a million times, you're an adult, you don't necessarily revisit it. You just think back like, oh, that was a good movie, And sometimes you'll watch a movie as a kid and be like, and watch it as an adult and be like, oh, that's actually not very good. I still love it because it's nostalgia, but like, I thought it was so good. And I had rewatched Annie as an adult and I was like, wow, this is so well done. But I went on a YouTube rabbit hole like a month or two ago and I found a video of, it was like 3 past Annies singing Tomorrow, right? And it was like Sarah Jessica Parker, and it was like the current Annie, and then it was like Sarah Jessica Parker, and then they had Andrea McArdle come out, like, and I was like,
you're like, oh my God, that's so good.
Yeah, I was sitting like in the kitchen, just like on my laptop, and my boyfriend was on the couch sitting on his laptop, and I just all of a sudden, I was just bawling, just tears, because like they were singing the song Tomorrow and they were all so good and they just came out and it was like it was a full orchestra, and I think Charles Strauss was conducting, I can't remember, but it was like a really like huge concert thing, and I just was losing it because I was like listening to the lyrics and how they like are poignant today and like what we're going through with like the pandemic and everything, and Kent was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I just and I just was just bawling. And then I started watching like behind the scenes like documentaries about shooting the movie and all this stuff with like Aileen Quinn, and I just was like, gosh, what a piece of history. I mean, just with like Carol Burnett and Bernadette Peters and like, I mean, just yeah. So I was obsessed as a kid, and then I had like a rekindling of it, that love, just pretty recently. I think it was like maybe 3 months ago. So yeah.
And do you have a favorite show you did regionally in St. Louis before you started doing like national tours and
yeah, I did so many. I don't know that I have like a favorite. I have like specific fond memories of each like place I did shows there. Like I would say like I remember really enjoying doing Grease at the Muni. Like I remember like my mom made me this like pink dress, which I'm pretty sure is still sitting in my closet. I was just in the teen ensemble, but Tommy Walsh was our choreographer, and he was in the original chorus line. I think he was the original Bobby. He's now passed away, but he was so fun, and he'd be like, fabulash, fabuloso, all right, let's do it again. Like he was just so funny, and his choreography was so good. I still remember some of it, which is crazy because it was so many years ago. So I would say that was maybe one of my favorite things I did at the Muni. I did get to play Grace and Annie when I was in high school, but that was youth theater, obviously. But I remember that was like a really great experience and really fun show I did, just with like community theater, and trying to think what else. There were so many. Yeah, and I got my equity card doing Grease too in St. Louis at Stage of St. Louis. So that was a good experience too, where I was like, I'm getting my equity card. I was still in college at the time, because I went to college in St. Louis too. I went to Webster. So
I'm not sure if this is a thing you all can talk about when you have equity cards, but can you talk about like how you get it?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm sure there's a lot of people would want to know.
I got mine in like 2006, so probably a lot of rules have changed, and I know about a lot of the rule changes, but I'm not like up to date on like the super speed. I got mine based on weeks, which is now popular again, but at the time it wasn't a super popular way to get your card, because back then it was 50 weeks. You had to work 50 weeks at a professional theater. So I did Bye Bye Birdie at a theater in St. Louis called Stages when I was 14, and I can't remember if I started earning weeks that summer or the summer after that, because they hired me back the summer after that when I was 15, and I started earning weeks. So it's basically like every week that you work under that contract at that equity sanctioned theater, you can collect EMC points. So that's equity membership candidate points. I know, it's so much. This is only like one way to get it.
It's like, whoa.
I know. And so at that theater, I don't know if this is still true, but their contracts per show were like I want to say about 7 weeks long. Like they do like 2 or 3 weeks of rehearsal, and then they do like 3 or 4 weeks of shows. Maybe it was 4 or 5 weeks of shows. I can't remember anyway. But so I would, if I did like 2 shows, you know, one summer with that theater company, I would have 14 weeks or 14 points after that summer. And then the next summer, and then, so it kind of all added up. And then when I was 21, it was my summer between my junior and senior year of college. And I remember thinking, well, I think if I book a show here this summer, I'll be at 50 weeks. And I remember thinking that I was, or at least 48, like I was getting really close. And the general manager at the time called me, and I think he was just going to give me my card anyway, because he didn't ask about my weeks. He just was like, and I think you've worked here a lot, we should give you your equity card. So this is the offer, but I'm just going to look into that for you. And I was like, really? He was like, yeah, I'm gonna see if we can make that happen. And I was like, that would be amazing. And I was like freaking out. Yeah. So that was really cool. So that's how I got mine, which was in 2006, which was a long time ago. Now I think you only have to get 25 weeks to do that, which is half. And they changed that rule a few years ago, and we got a lot of new members. You also can get it by, like, I think the Muni still gives out cards a lot. Like, I actually haven't worked there professionally. I just did their shows as a kid, but they'll like, if they hire you to be in the ensemble, the adult ensemble, they give you your card. And I think you can pass one time. I think it's called like a Taft-Hartley or something. And like, you can like say like, I'm not quite ready yet, so I'd like to request to do this contract, but not get my card yet. And they say, okay. And I want to say you can only do that once, but I don't really know the rules. Also, just if you book a Broadway show or a national tour, like that's it. Like you get your card. And then often your initiation fee just comes out of your salary.
Yes.
They do that a lot. My mom was really great. She had told me, because she knew it was what I wanted to do, and I had points, and she said, well, whenever you get your card, your college graduation gift is going to be your initiation fee. So I got it the summer before I graduated, and she was like, happy graduation. And it's so funny because it like wasn't even a question at the time, but now that I'm an adult and I'm older and I'm like watching, you know, the different, you know, twists and turns that life can take. And like, there's a pandemic and like our tour stopped and all these things. I'm like, well, it's a good thing I graduated. Like, what if something had happened and I didn't graduate, you know? And I mean, I'm sure she still would have been super happy, but she just was like, okay, this is your graduation gift a year early. So she ended up gifting me that, which was super, because I think it's even more expensive now, but at the time it was probably $1,000 something, but I think it's more than that, just the initiation fee alone, but I can't remember. I don't know what it is now, but.
And you're right, with like everything going on now and everything on pause, it's like the students who are like seniors going into these schools that are like highly competitive schools are like, am I even going back to school, and am I even
in class? Yeah. And I think about like the seniors, like the musical theater grads from college who just graduated this year, who are like, okay, great.
Yeah.
I've got my degree. I've studied and trained. I'm going to move to New York. Where's New York?
Yeah.
You know, I feel so, it's so funny because there was such a struggle involved of like the change of adjustment of, you know, what auditions in the city and everything is different, and networking and everything. But I was so lucky that I could just audition all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like I would cry if I didn't like, you know, get a callback or whatever, but like, at least I could go to the next one the next day. Like it wasn't like they were being canceled or you had to do it online or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like the things you take for granted that you don't realize.
Yes.
Granted, you know?
Someone was talking about the other day, because I was asking about like how they go about auditions and stuff, and like how they keep positive during auditions, because it's a lot of like the no's and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, it's another chance to perform. So like,
that's true. And that's a really good way to look at it. I often find that if I'm going into the room and really thinking about the work and the fact that I get to play this character today, I get to do this scene and this song, and I get to be this person, and what a great opportunity. Like if I go in with that mindset, I usually do a lot better work. and I don't always get the result I want. Like, that doesn't mean that that means you're going to book it, but like, you're more likely to represent yourself better. Because you really can tell, like, you can just smell the desperation if someone is just as like, okay, I want to get the job. You know, if you're acting to get the job, then it's a slippery slope, you know?
You can tell if someone's enjoying
Yeah.
the whole audition process. And then speaking of school and right now, what was your education experience like in musical theater?
Yeah.
These schools are competitive and hard.
Oh, you know what? It's more competitive now than when I was in school. I mean, it was pretty competitive when I was there. I remember I auditioned at a couple schools out of state. And I got waitlisted and rejected and accepted. Like, I got like all the letters, you know, like all the things. Cried, wasn't sure what to do. And then I ended up just staying in town and going to Webster. And one of the reasons I chose Webster was I had worked with some Webster grads at Stages and at the Muni. And I looked up to these people, you know, these people who had this education, and I thought they were really talented. And I also chose Webster because it had a really strong acting program. And it still does. I don't mean to say had. It did at the time, and it does now. But I had spent my whole childhood, yes, being in plays and taking voice lessons and dancing heavily, like doing a lot of dance classes and recitals and competitions and stuff. But I didn't really have a lot of like actual acting training. And I don't even think I realized how much I needed it and how much it could help me with everything until like after graduation. And I just said this the other day. I was having a conversation, and I still think back to certain exercises and certain things that I learned in college, and I'll just start to use something new even now, like years and years later. So like, it was a really good program at the time, and I wasn't even ready for all the information and all the education that I got at the time. Like, some of the things I was like, why are we doing this? Like, do you know what I mean? And now I think back and I'm like, oh, that's really smart. I'm going to try to use that tool that I thought was so useless before, and I'm going to use it now in this scene I'm working on. You know what I mean? And I also recently just did some like online camps for kids through a company that I teach for off and on, and it was more like, you know, acting stuff, and they wanted me to talk about like Uta Hagen and Stanislavski and all this like hardcore stuff, and I was like, wow, I haven't like, you know, really researched that since college. And so I like reread a couple books and like remembered, and then it like opened up. I was like, oh wow, this is a good exercise that I could do with them I can do it on Zoom. And I remember doing it in college and like all these things. And so I remember like just realizing that at the age I am now, going, I think that was the right place for me. Like, I'm still using the things that I learned as a teacher, as well as an actor, as well as, you know what I mean? Because you don't use it all the time. Like, you get put in a show and you're like, okay, what number am I on? What are the words? Especially as a swing or an understudy, you're like, okay, and I have to stand on 10, and I hold the hands, and then I let go, and then I grab this proper. I mean, there's so many things to think about. You're not always thinking like objective intention and you know, what are your circumstances? And I'm cold. Like, you don't always go quite so as deep into it as you'd like, because there are so many, you know, things to focus on. But yeah, so I don't know that I really spoke to the competition of it though. But when I auditioned for college, there was no pre-screen because people didn't have smartphones then. So it was actually a much simpler process. Like, I flew out to, my mom said I could fly to 2 places to audition. So I flew two places to audition, and I did send in a video audition, I think to like Penn State or something. One place that I thought had a really good program, but it wasn't like in my top 3. So I was like, well, I'll just send a video to them, you know, because I would think that's a great place for me to go, but I'm also looking at these other places, you know. But there was no, like, you didn't have to be invited to audition. Then it was like, you signed up to audition. And now it's like, okay, pre-screens, you know, and it's just like, it's even, and I don't know how much that has to do with like everyone having access to a camera, or if it's also that it's become that much more competitive, that more people want to do it. I mean, it was pretty competitive when I was auditioning, but I don't know.
It's crazy. It's just like these kids have such, like, they have to develop self-esteem so fast.
Yeah. And it's hard. I think it's hard when you're 18. Like, I definitely knew this is what I wanted to do. And I knew I was talented, but I definitely didn't know where I fit. I mean, I definitely was like, I'm a dancer, but I'm not like a chorus girl with long legs. I'm a singer and an actress, and I'm 18, but I'm not really an ingenue. Like I just was, you know what I mean? But I was trying to be those things because I didn't really know what other choice I had. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, it's tricky to kind of know what your niche is. And I could do a lot of different things, but I didn't know where they fit. And really the answer for me was just to go to auditions. I just started going to auditions, and, you know, I started to get callbacks, and the callbacks kind of told me like, oh, you know, I must look, you know, British because Billy Elliot's calling me back, or, oh, Matilda's still interested. It must be good. I'm good at these accents. And you know what I mean? Just like different things, or, oh, Mary Poppins called me back because I did the tap well. Okay. Like, I'm like, these are the things that make me special. You know what I mean? But it's like, cause if you can do a lot of things, it's hard to know where to focus your energy. If that makes sense.
Yes. And before I get into these national tours and the Broadway stuff, how did you become so well-rounded and like everything? Because like dance, voice, like singing, acting, just everything.
That's so nice of you to say that. It was just all I did. It was just all I wanted to do as a kid. Do you know what I mean? I think it was like my hobby and also my work. So it was like, I think I knew as a kid, just from being in such a great theater town like St. Louis, I knew that it was competitive and I was pretty driven. So I think, and also like, I didn't realize when I was a kid, like how long life is. Like, I remember when I was a child, I would beg my mom to let me take more dance lessons. I'd be like, I need to be better at ballet. I'm really good at tap, but I'm not very good at ballet. And I really need to get better at it. And she'd be like, well, you can take more dance classes, or you can take, I remember her, she was like, you can take this many dance classes, which is a lot, and not do any shows this semester, or you can do the shows and take a couple dance classes. And I always chose to do the shows and a couple dance classes because I loved being in a play so much. But then when I got into college, I had like ballet 4 days a week anyway. And then all of a sudden I remember noticing my technique was really improving, and I was like 20, and I was like, oh, okay. So you know what I mean? And stuff with voice, like that's, I think, a little more sensitive, and dance too. I mean, you want to get an early start, but, you know, and then I added kind of the acting training to that. So I think I kept kind of trying to, and, you know, you always find the teachers that you really like, but then of course, you know, then I moved to New York, and the business ebbs and flows, but then all of these actor musician shows showed up, and my dad was a retired band director, and I used to play the saxophone, and I was like, I shouldn't have quit band. Like,
I saw that on your resume too, and I was like, she played instruments too.
Wait a minute. I know, and I'm actually very mediocre at all the instruments I play, but it is something that I love to do. So you know, if I brush up on it, that's why I did put it on my resume, because I was like, well, if there's an audition in a week, I can play something pretty well for an actor, you know. But I don't practice those things as often as I should, and it's not like my forte. I'm more of like an actor, singer, dancer that can also play a couple instruments sometimes, but it's more my boyfriend who does all that kind of stuff. So I always am just like, teach me this, teach me that. But I should be more disciplined than I am. But I think it's just, it's a love for the art. And I think it's also, you know, an age thing. Like the older you get, if you keep, you know, working on things, you'll get more experience. You'll have worked with more teachers. You'll have, you know, just more tools in your toolkit of like things to try in a scene. It just is a matter of just keeping going, I think.
Yes, exactly. So, what was the first national tour or Broadway show that you swung or understudied for?
Billy Elliot.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a really cool story because I got it without an agent, which doesn't happen very often. And I literally was at the right place at the right time, which is insane. But I did move to New York with my equity card. So that means that I could just go into any audition anytime I wanted, and I would definitely get seen. You know, it didn't get me a job, but it would get me seen no matter what. And I had been in all these calls from Mary Poppins because I had just gone and it was like tap. And so I was like, okay, great. And then I would like get kept to the end, but that never ended up happening before it closed. But I kept thinking, I was like, I think maybe I want to be in Mary Poppins because clearly I'm right for it. They keep calling me in for it and I keep, you know, getting called back. And then I had gone to so many auditions that the casting directors remembered me. And then they started to call me in for Billy Elliot. And it was the people at Tara Rubin, and they were so lovely. And they just called my cell phone because that's what number was on my resume at the time. And then I started going to auditions for Billy Elliot, and I was like freaking out every time because it was before it opened on Broadway. I didn't end up getting cast at first in the original company. But the crazy thing that happened was the casting director, so I was working at a soap store called Saban at the time to like pay the bills, which it barely did, but that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And it was like a week after the final callback, and I knew it was the final callback, and I felt really good about it, but I didn't know if I had gotten it or not. And I was like restocking shelves with like an apron on, just like, and the casting director, and it was Mother's Day, and the casting director walked in with his mom, and we were in Soho. So like, it wasn't like he was like, I'm going to go find Natalie. It's like, it wasn't in Midtown. Yeah. It was like Soho on Mother's Day. So clearly his mom was visiting, and he was like walking around Soho with her. And he was like, let's go check out this place. They have soaps that smell good. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have to assume like that's how it happened. And I was stocking shelves, and I heard like a really familiar voice come in, and I was like, and I turn around, and it's the casting director for Billy Elliot. And I was like, hi. And he was like, hi, Natalie, how are you? And I like stood up, and I'm like wearing this apron. I was like, hi, I'm good. How are you? He's like, good. And then I was like, I wonder if he's going to say anything. And then he came over, and his mom was just like sniffing soaps and stuff. He said, hey, since I've run into you, he's like, not to talk shop or anything, but just wanted you to know that, you know, everyone really loved you last week at Billy Elliot, and like, you know, the team really loved you. And if something doesn't happen now, it'll, you know, it's likely to happen down the line, and it would probably be swing, and not to dangle a carrot, but I guess I am, but I just wanted to let you know you did a really good job. And I was like, thank you so much. And he basically was telling me I didn't get it, but I was just like, thank you so much. Like, you just don't know, like, if it was out of your control. And he was like, it's out of your control. And I was like, thank you. And then I like went to the back and started crying tears of joy for like almost getting on Broadway. And then they did their like hand washing, because like you're supposed to offer to wash the customers' hands with this like sea salt scrub, which who knows if that's going to stay the same now after this pandemic. But yeah, it would be like, do you want to try our sea salt scrub? There was like a big sink in the middle of they still have these stores around. I haven't been in one in a long time, but they're still in New York. But I like looked at the girl I was working with, and my face was just like, I'm not washing his hands. Like, I was like, I can't. Be like, thanks so much. I'm so glad the team loved me. Did you want to try the patchouli lavender vanilla? Like, you know what I mean? I just, just like, I can't. Like,
you're like, I'm either gonna be over happy or like break down happy crying.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. I just was like, I can't. So I went back, and I like cried tears of joy, got myself together. They were still there. I went back out, and then he was like, okay, great. He's like, bye, Natalie. And I was like, bye. And I was like, oh my gosh, guess what just happened? And I was like talking to this girl I was working with, who's super sweet. Anyway, so then after that, we kind of played phone tag every like 6 months. So like I kept going to like the required calls, because if a show is open on Broadway or a tour is open on a production contract, it has to, and even CETA, you have to hold a call. You have to hold an audition basically every 6 months. It's like an equity role.
Yeah.
So even if you're not looking for someone, if you're producing a long running show, you have to at least hold an audition to like update the files. So I just, every 6 months, I just made sure I was in New York to sing or go to the dance call. Like I just kind of kept reminding them I was there. And then the casting director just kind of kept calling me randomly, and I shouldn't say kept calling, but there were two different times that he called, and he was like, where are you right now? What's your availability? And I was like, and I didn't know. Now I know, like, don't get excited yet. Like now I've had my agent call and say, what's your availability for this? They're looking at you for this. Okay, great. Like it's an availability check. But like when you're, 20 something and you're just getting started, you're like, they want to know if I'm available. I'm cast. Like, do you know what I mean? Like I just literally would just always go there. But it didn't always work out with the timing, and sometimes they say like, you're a little too young for this track or whatever, but they just really loved you. So they wanted to check. And then finally it happened. That finally the last time that he called me, it was like in the fall, and I was finishing up a summer show, and we like played phone tag, and he just was like, I just need to know when you're available. Okay, you don't have to change your flight because this person wouldn't start rehearsals till this day. And I was like, okay. And we just and he was so nice. He gave me his cell phone number. Like there was one point where I like called his cell phone number on a Sunday, I think. And I just felt like such a horrible person and like so unprofessional. But it was like, because I had to know if I had to change my flight or not.
Yeah.
You know? But I just was like, I'm so sorry. I know I'm calling your cell phone on a Sunday, but like, I'm happy to change my flight, but like, I have to do it now. And he called me right back. He was like, I was just about to call you. No problem. Don't change your flight. It's okay. I'm still waiting to hear. But like, he could not have been nicer to me. And then I was like on my way back to New York I was doing Crazy for You in California, in Modesto, not in LA, in Modesto, this like little town in California.
Yeah,
and,
it's where I interviewed Lindsay Piercy.
Really?
The other week, and she's from Modesto.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's a cute little town. I was playing Polly out there, and it was really great. It was years ago that I was out there, but I was like on a layover in Denver, and that's where I found out. And he was like, have you talked to anyone yet? And I was like, no. And he was like, okay, well, I want to be the first to congratulate you on your Broadway debut. And I was like, what? And like everything started spinning. Like I felt like I was floating, and I just was like, thank you so much. And he's like, you're welcome so much. And I was like, I'm so happy. And he was like, I'm so glad you're happy. Yeah, so you're gonna be the new swing and blah blah blah. And I was like, okay. Like, and I just was just like freaking out. I started rehearsals the next day at like 1:00 in the afternoon.
The next day.
The next day. That's how fast it was. And usually I think often they'll have you come in for another audition, but I had auditioned so many times. And I think I was like on a list, of like, okay, she's approved. If we have like an emergency or something, you can just call her. But I also had come in every 6 months, and it had only been like, I think a year, it was like, I think it had been a year. So it was like, it was less than a year after they had opened, but it was after they won the Tony. And that was my first time swinging.
Tony Award show.
Yeah.
Well,
and I remember that night too, because I hadn't come close to getting any other show at that point. And I remember watching them win the Tony and being so happy for the show and happy for them, because I love the show so much. And I was like, it was like bittersweet, because I was like sad that I wasn't there, because I was like, oh, I could have been there. But then I was also like, this means the show is probably going to run a long time, so maybe I'll get to be in it. And then I did it for like 2 years and 4 months. It was like one of the best experiences.
Wow.
Yeah, I was so happy there. And it's probably a good thing that we closed, because I probably would still be in it today. Like I was so happy. Like I would have stayed forever. It was just such a great experience. In fact, I'm getting text messages right now from one of the girls in the cast of that show. Like we're like still best friends. So,
you would have like missed so many other experiences though if you had stayed in the show for longer.
It always for the right reasons, but I was just so happy. Like, so it's a good thing that we didn't stay open, because I don't think I ever would have left.
And at the time, since that was like your first Broadway national tour part, did you realize how much work went into being a swing?
I did, only a little bit. I didn't realize how rewarding it would be. I did realize how much work it would go into, only because at Stages, where I did shows as a kid at Stage St. Louis, when there wasn't a part for me, they allowed me to swing the show a couple times, which was really cool and a little bit unusual. I think Goodspeed does it, but a lot of regional theaters, the shorter runs, don't usually do that. But they started to do it with me, and they've since, I think, started to do it for other young people who seem like they have a good swing brain and who they are super driven and they want the experience of it. So I knew how much work would be involved. Like I knew how to make note cards. I didn't yet know about like filming and stuff like that, because that's a new thing. And sometimes that's actually not allowed, but I have done that. I have utilized that as a tool a lot as a swing. But I did know how much work would go into it. I was more surprised at how often I got to go on, because I got to go on a lot. And I was also, the learning curve for me there was also like being a replacement. Like now I know like the difference between like when you're a replacement swing and when you're an original swing, and both have like pros and cons. and one of the things that's a little bit crazy about being a replacement swing is it's good because you're in like the room with the dance captain and like they're teaching you everything like one thing at a time, but like you don't always get all of the details that you get when you're in like the big rehearsal process. Yeah. So some of the things I learned from like the other actors, one of my friends got moved up, I shouldn't say that, but moved over into a role and she was the swing. So I technically replaced her, and she was still on the show. And she let me look at her charts and stuff. And I didn't have like the hours of rehearsal to like write down where everyone was. I'd have to just like watch the show and be like, I guess they were behind this person. You know what I mean? Like if I was teaching myself a track or teaching myself spacing, I'd have to just watch the show and and I would just like scribble. But so she helped me with the charts. And then she also told me like little things like, oh, don't cross your legs during the Christmas scene because women in Easington don't cross their legs. And I was like, oh. Or like things like first covers, like there was one number where with all men, and in an emergency, a woman would go out in her cop costume and be a man. And I started with a random one because I was like, well, you know, one of my friends is going to the show, and you know, I'll learn his part first because, you know, I'm comfortable asking him questions because we knew each other from another show. And I had started with the wrong side of the stage, but I didn't find out until I got to rehearsal. And they were like, can you do this person? I was like, well, I just started learning that person. I realized I was like, oh, stage right is my first covers and stage left is the other swing's first covers. But I didn't realize that. And just no one had told me yet because that wasn't their priority. Their priority was to teach me the women tracks, which they did a wonderful job of that. I just didn't realize. And so it was an awakening to me of like, oh, I need to know what questions to ask. And I need to ask everybody all the questions because, you know, you don't always get the exact information you need before you have to go on. Cause I was on like after like, you know, 2 weeks of rehearsal, you know, so you don't always have all the time that you have as an original swing. But but I did have an advantage. I did know how much work it would be. Cause I had sort of swung before, like regionally. So
that's awesome that you got that experience regionally.
Super awesome. Early on. Super awesome. Yeah, I learned a lot doing that. It was really, really great opportunity for me. I was super grateful for that.
Because I feel like that not many people actually realize how hard you all have to work and like how many tracks there are to go into in every show.
Yeah.
Like, you have to fit in your brain.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's just constant maintenance. Like, it's like, you know, I just always like check in like, okay, when was the last time I did that track? And I've started to, with Frozen, I started to make lists of like, I started to make just like a review journal. So I would just like and I still do this now because now I'm like, oh, I haven't been studying very much. And because like, you know, when quarantine first started, I was going through one track a day, just like every single day. I'd spend a half hour doing a speed through of somebody's track, you know, and then I got to like April and I was like doing it every other day.
Yeah.
Then I got to May and I was doing it like once a week, and now it's like 2 or 3 tracks a month. Like it's like now I'm like slowed down. But I feel just like right. But now I just like write down the date, and then I write down the track I did, and then I write down what I did. Like if I did video check with it, or like if I did like if I referenced like my notes or whatever, you know. And I made videos of myself doing some of the choreography, so I'll like check that and stuff like that. But.
And then you also you understudied in Matilda too.
Yeah. Matilda was so great. Yeah, I got to understudy Miss Honey and Mrs. Wormwood, and it was so awesome. It felt so good for like my actor muscles to get to work on 2 roles that are so different. And I got to go on to both of them a lot eventually. So it was really, really great. And some of the best people I worked with too in that show. It was just like such an awesome experience.
And what was your favorite stop on either Billy Elliot or Matilda?
I'm not sure. It's so hard because it really is. Sometimes it's colored by just like what you choose to do in the city. I really enjoyed LA all the times I've been to LA. I specifically love the Pantages actually, where we were with Frozen, because I was there with Billy Elliot as well. Yeah.
So your like memory is when you came back.
No, yeah, I don't know what my favorite was. I'm not super awesome at like being as adventurous as I should be, and that was actually going to be one of my goals going on in Frozen, of like, I need to be more fun, like, because I'm so used to being like, well, I have to go through my tracks and I have to save money and I have to, you know what I mean, I get really like old lady. I actually surprise people when I tell them. So I actually met my boyfriend on the Billy Elliot tour, and I one of my favorite stops was Detroit, which everyone's always like, what? Everyone thinks like Detroit is terrible, right? But like we found this like amazing yoga studio there, and like we were like being vegetarians, and we're both vegetarian now, but we were like kind of trying it out. And so then we found this like vegetarian restaurant that was like down the street from it. And I went back to that same yoga studio when I went back with Matilda. And I don't know, I just have like these like really good memories of that city, even though everyone's always like
how?
you know, but it was just a really cool yoga place, and like we were falling in love, and like we found a vegetarian place, and it was like good exercise, and we're sweating, and good food, and like walking outside, and like, you know what I mean? They were just like, it was just kind of where I was at probably.
Yeah.
I also really love Seattle.
I've heard a lot of Seattle answers.
Seattle is probably the most popular answer that I can give. That's my own as well. Really good coffee. I love being by the water. I went up in the Ferris wheel by myself both times I was there. So I was there with Matilda, and then we were just there recently with Frozen, and I remember being like, I have to go back to the Great Wheel, because like now it's this thing that I do. I like go on tour, and then I like sit on the Great Wheel, and I like enjoy the view, like, and I always go by myself just because I'm like, it's like almost like meditation, I guess. But
I need to go to Seattle. Everyone's
have you not been?
Seattle with tour stops, and I'm like, I've never been. Never.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It's so great.
Obviously not right now, but
right. Obviously.
Yeah. I was thinking about coming out to Seattle for like a week, but then I was like, Pantages, I forgot what show was going on at Pantages when y'all were doing it there.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't think I can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great city. I really like it a lot. And I saw like a friend from college who lives there now. And we went to a really cool like wine restaurant called Purple last time I was there. And it was like really like the ambiance was really cool, like really rustic wood and like really fancy like dishes, and just really fun. But I don't know. I'm not very good at answering that question, because I have so many fond tour memories, but most of them are about the people.
Yeah.
So then like what I did there or what the city was like. But I don't know. I have to get better at that question, because you're not the person who's asking that question. I'm always like, I don't know, Detroit. Okay, you know.
Detroit.
But, yeah.
So in Groundhog Day too, how did you get cast in Groundhog Day?
It was the same team as Matilda.
Okay.
And I saw it was coming up, and I had been doing Matilda for a long time. I was still doing Matilda. I was in Toronto, and I reached out to my agent and also to a couple people on the team, and I just was like, I'd really love to be considered for this. You know, and at one point I got a response that was like, oh, it's already cast, but I didn't know you were interested. And I was like, oh, like, you know what I mean? I was like, okay, well, I guess, you know, but I was at the kind of point with Matilda where I could have kept doing it, but I had been doing it for like almost 2 years, and I was feeling like a new challenge. And Groundhog Day provided that very, very successfully.
Yeah.
It's a very difficult show, but I did finally get an appointment, because they were like, oh, actually we are still looking for a couple people. So then I flew from Toronto to New York for like a day. And my stage manager was super cool. Like I didn't miss hardly at all. And I just was like, so I have a personal day. I might have to call it the next day too. I'll let you know if I get a call back. And he was like, okay. And he was super nice. And I was like, okay. I was like, but I'll text you. And I like texted him as soon as I knew if I had a call back. I texted him in the cab on the way to the airport. I was like, I'm going to make my flight. And I pulled up to the theater like at half hour the next day, like after my call back for Groundhog Day. So it was like I flew out. Yeah. I know. I flew out. I didn't have an apartment at the time anymore in New York. So I like stayed at a hotel. I went to the audition in New York. I had a callback for the next day. I learned the song that night in my hotel room. And then I went to the callback the next day. After the callback, I went straight to the airport and then like pulled up at half hour. And like, luckily I wasn't on, so I just could chill after that. But I like walked into the office. I was like, I'm here. Yeah. He's like, okay, great. He's like, you're not on. And I was like, okay, great. And that was it. So that was great. And then that was, I learned so much doing Groundhog Day. It was probably the hardest show I've ever swung. I think I can say that. I don't think anyone would be offended for me not saying the other shows I've swung, but, and it wasn't so much the number of people. It was just that every set of choreography was different for each person. it was very, very staged, super specifically. So that was really good for my brain. And there were a lot of props, and the backstage traffic was super specific. So like I think that my backstage notes were probably more detailed than my onstage notes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think the things that were the most challenging about that show was that backstage traffic and the props and everything, and safety and quick changes. There were so many quick changes, things like that. But then also every day was different. So like the first half hour of the show felt like a whole show, because it was like the first day the counts were different than the second day, but you're in the same costume and you're doing almost the same steps, but the counts are different because it's day 2. And then on day 3, it was like, well, now the counts are different too. And then on day 4, which is technically called, I think it was like strut or something, it's like when he starts to get kind of crazy, then it's like completely different music. So then it's not as confusing, but it's still more information to remember. And that was just like the first 20 minutes of the show. But it was super fun because all of the ensemble members had like a different part. So there was a lot of like different parts to sing and like different solo lines, and like, you know, I got to be a doctor and a Scientologist and you know, a waitress who can't sing and a piano teacher. Like I got to be like all these really fun parts. So, you know, and like, you know, Mrs. Lancaster, the inn owner, the bed and breakfast owner, I should say. So for that reason, it was like super artistically fulfilling. But as a swing, my brain, super hard. Cause like I can probably go through like, if I'm speeding through it, I can go through like, I can speed through a track, you know, from Frozen in like half an hour, you know, and it's great. And I'm like, and I hit all the things and I'm like singing really, really fast, you know, but I can kind of go through it and I know who my dance partner is and I'm like going through, but if I was doing Groundhog Day, I remember, I think it probably took me about an hour to do the same thing. I'd be like, and this is day 1, this is day 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, okay. This is day 2, this is 2, and then I go off. And then because I'd have to also say all like the backstage traffic. Whereas like with other shows, I'll be like, and then I change my wig first, and then I change my costume, or vice versa, or whatever.
You don't have to worry about the backstage as much.
Yeah, and there is stuff, like there's always stuff to remember backstage, but Groundhog Day was very specific, you know, and if you're this person, you get your notepad from the second, you know, shelf, and then you hand it to Phil, but then he gives you a different one back, but then you have to put it back on the first shelf, but then you like, and it was just like, you had to get the coffee cup, and it was crazy. Super great, but just very, very, very hard.
See, I was gonna say, like, I'm always so impressed with the people who have like scientific brains, but like hearing you talk about like memorizing all these stage directions, I'm like, that's about just as hard as knowing all these scientific facts about everything.
Yeah, I'm not a science person. I'm not, and I'm definitely not a math person. Like, and I talked to my other swing friend a lot about this. Like, we were practicing Frozen tracks, and he's a swing too, and we were talking about how some people's brains as a swing work differently, and most swings like look at the big picture, and they'll see like all the couples or all the people on the chart, and they'll be like, oh, so this is the pattern, so it goes like this, and then these 2 people go out first and these 2 people go in first, and they see the pattern. If I think that way, if I'm on stage and I'm thinking about the pattern, I won't do the step right. Like I have to like start with one track. Okay, the person in the front is here, I go forward first, then back first, this is the step, I'm this person, and I do it a million times, and then I'm like, okay, great, all right, I'll reverse it, and then I go to this person, I'm like, okay, oh yeah, I see. Okay, there's a little bit of a pattern. Okay, and this person, okay, great. And I learn those 2 tracks, and then I go up here, and I learn it separately because I'm a very much a list person. I'm like an order person. Like I'm very linear.
You kind of have to be in the doing what tracks.
Yeah.
All these
And then
tracks.
once I get to like the 4th or 5th one, I go, oh, so the pattern is this, and I'll like turn to my swing friend, and he'll be like, yeah, and I'll be like, cool, I didn't realize, and I'd be like, I told you, and I'd be like, I didn't see it. Like I have to like learn each track one at a time before I see the pattern.
Yeah.
And most swings that I've talked to are more like big picture, like, oh yeah, this is the pattern. And I'm like, no, I'm this person. And now I'm this person. And now I'm this person. And then I'm just, oh, there's a pattern, you know?
Yes. And then getting into a little Frozen.
Yeah.
What has your overall like experience been like on the tour for Frozen? Because it's such a special show, obviously.
So good. Yeah.
Well received. Unfortunately got cut short on Broadway, but
I know. So great. The people are wonderful. I mean, it's such a wonderful kind group of people, and they're all just super supportive of each other. I'll never forget the first time I went on, like the curtain came down and everyone just started like dancing, and it's pretty lovely and pretty normal because theater is such a wonderful thing. Like I remember like pretty much every time I've gone on a new track as a swing, or at least the first time on a show, like everyone will turn to you and applaud after the curtain comes down. And that's super special. But like, but after my first time going on in Frozen, everyone just like came up and hugged me, and like there was like a huge dance party, and then like one of my like swing friends was like filming it, and like so I have it like filmed of like everyone cheering for me and like dancing and shouting, and I just was like, this is special. Like I was like, and I've done this a lot. I've been in a lot of like beautiful companies and wonderful people and kind souls, and like I just remember that was like huge.
Yes.
So that's been amazing, especially as a swing. Like it's just a really genuine group of people, and we've tried to stay in touch a little, you know, like we like, you know, hang out on Zoom and stuff.
Thank goodness for Zoom, I'm telling you. Like
I didn't even know what it was before this year. I had never heard of it.
Same. Yeah, and now I'm using it like every day. So
Every day.
Well, basically every weekday. Yeah. It's insane.
It's so crazy.
And I was gonna say the curtain call energy during Frozen is already so wonderful.
Yeah.
So that must just be like a bonus to like when you know you're gonna celebrate with all your cast members afterwards.
Yeah, and then it was so great to pay it forward, like because then I got to be on stage and going on like during a few debuts in LA specifically.
Yeah,
there, and then I got to kind of pay that forward and like dance with everyone, and then sometimes I wouldn't be on and there'd be a debut and I'd be the one, you know, like being like yay, and then you send it to that one person, and like so they have like the memory of like, you know, that feeling of that of accomplishment and support.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
There are a couple of specific days in LA when all four of you are on, right?
Yes. Do you mean like Elsa
like
on cover and two swings and
or
all four swings on, you mean? Yes.
Yeah, all four swings.
Took pictures. Yes.
Yes. That's amazing. But did you expect that to happen like that early on in the tour?
Yes and no. I'll say I didn't expect it just because it was early, but I wasn't surprised, but the lack of surprise was just because I've seen so many crazy things happen at this point with being a swing so much for so many years. But yeah, it was definitely early to have all of us go on at the same time. I want to say with Matilda, that didn't happen quite so early on, but it's such a perfect storm. Like it's like a perfect formula of like, you just never know. And like, you know, one person doesn't feel good and the other person has a personal day and this person, you know what I mean? It's just you never know what can happen. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And are you allowed to talk about costumes?
About what?
Favorite costumes?
Oh, I think so. Yeah. I probably Frozen costumes are it's probably the best costumes I've ever had in a show. They're beautiful. I couldn't believe how lucky I was that I got a blue ball gown because blue is my absolute favorite color. And I was trying it on and I was like, how did they know? Right. And then I like see a picture of the swing on Broadway and I'm like, oh, it's just, okay, it has to be this color because it's the same spot. Okay. But, and then also like my Queen costume, my Queen Aduna costume. Oh my gosh. Just like so, like all of the patterns and all the different like bits of detail. Like, I don't think I've ever worn costumes that are that detailed, like up close. Like you look at it up close and you're like, whoa, you know, like it's so beautiful. Yeah, I love all the costumes so much. And I felt so lucky too, because it's so easy to feel, you know, you do all these different shows and we all have our own like, insecurities, right? And when we were doing like the hidden vote costumes and stuff, they were like, we want you to be comfortable, so like let us know. And I was like, okay, yeah, I feel good. And like I didn't have to say anything, but I just felt like super comfortable. And I felt like they just were so smart because about, you know, making you look good, but also asking, do you feel good? Do you know what I mean? And I think that's a skill that like not all costumers have automatically. You know, it's like something you kind of learn of like, oh, like I'm, you know, this person has to feel confident on stage and do all these different things. And like, You know what I mean? So it was really cool to feel so taken care of.
And all the costumes fit like so well with every scene and every backdrop on stage. You see every, like, just all the choreography, like the costumes just fit. They're amazing.
They're so pretty. Yeah. Every costume fitting I had, I was just like, this is so amazing. I love it so much. Yeah.
And what show did you cover or do you have the most tracks to cover? Have you had the most tracks to cover?
I think Frozen.
Really?
A number of tracks, yeah. Because there are 9 girls. And in Billy Elliot, I was so lucky. There are only 4 women in Billy Elliot. So like I covered like 4 tracks. Mom sometimes, so that was a couple extra scenes and like a split track to kind of add to that. And then the boys, I learned the boys. And sometimes I would go on for a ballet girl in the finale. So like I learned like, 20 to 30 in the finale, but that was like mostly based on charts and I would only do the finale. So I'd have like the whole show to look at that. But that wasn't like a full track. And then Matilda, again, was only 3 ensemble tracks, and then Miss Honey, Mrs. Wormwood. So that was really only 5 tracks. 2 of which were principals. So I had enough to do.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
And Groundhog Day was only 7 women.
Well, that's still.
It was a lot, and it felt like 17. But it was only 7. And then Frozen, we have 9. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Y'all deserve all the applause. That's why the second the curtain goes up after any show, I'm like, standing ovation.
Oh my gosh, we loved seeing you. It was so nice to see you at the stage door too. You were always so supportive and sweet to us.
I was gonna say, speaking of that, what was your favorite part about like going out to stage door after Frozen? Because there's so many kids dressed up in Frozen.
I love those kids. The kids dressed up are probably my favorite thing. They have like stars in their eyes and they're just like, and even the young ones that like don't really know what's happening, I think those are really fun too, because like the mom is always like, ask her for her autograph, and they're like,
yes.
I get such a kick out of it. It's so it's a really good reminder of like why we do it. It's like, because it's so rewarding and so wonderful to be a swing, but like you get the least rehearsal. That's like part of the gig. So like sometimes I would do a show and like I would mess something up, or I like wouldn't get the zipper done early enough, or I would feel like a lift didn't feel great because I didn't, plie soon enough or whatever. And you like make these little mistakes and you're so hard on yourself. And then you go outside and all the kids are like, and you're like, who cares? This is why we do this. Like you want to do your best and you want to, nail it every time. But it's really seeing like the little kids and how excited they are. You're like, this is why we tell this story. Like,
And it's a lot of those little kids' first theater experiences, and it's gonna be the reason that they love theater and like keep going back to the theater. So it's like, I remember I always told, as an usher, I always told the kids like afterwards who were dressed in like the Elsa costumes and the Anna costumes, I was like, by the way, you can go outside and you can go say hi to everyone, and they'd be like, what? They'd be like, I want to meet Elsa.
That's so cute.
And then I like saw a kid cry over Austin one time. That was fun.
She what?
A kid cried because Austin walked out one time.
Oh. That's so
funny. He's not scary in real life.
I know. That's so funny. Kids are they believe everything, which is kind of amazing.
Yes. It's the best. They have the best reactions to everything.
So funny. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I miss it.
I'm sure. What do you miss the most? Exactly. Besides what you've already said.
You know what? I think I really miss the people. I miss performing. I really miss the sense of teamwork. Like there's something about the teamwork of it, especially as a swing, or like, being a fellow cast member, like when someone does go on in a new track, or when, something gets changed last minute, like in any kind of like spacing rehearsal, I love the energy of just everybody is just like there for you.
Yes.
And when I mean there for you, like there for you, or there for you, like not me, but like just the person that we're focused. Okay, let's do this, and then we like go through it, and then we go through it, and then we ask questions, and it's like, it's just such a like,
you can tell
it's a cool community feeling. You know, it's like there's a lot of love on the stage, and there's like a lot of like, like we're all in this together kind of feeling. And I miss that. You can't, I mean, I shouldn't say you can't, but I have never felt that in like a Zoom situation or in a, like a, and I haven't done a lot of on camera stuff, but like, it's just not the same when you're not like all there together and you're like, okay, you know? Yeah.
And you can feel that just watching.
Yeah.
Anyways, some little like fun questions.
Yeah. Okay.
Who inspires you in the theater world, first of all? This is hard for everyone.
People. It is a hard question. It's a good question. Who inspires me? I'm really inspired by fellow castmates a lot. I'm really inspired, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say her because she's like one of my best friends now, but my friend Stephanie does more like TV film stuff now, but she was in Billy Elliot with me, and she was also in like Boy from Oz and Mary Poppins, and she's like done all these Broadway shows, and now she's done TV film. But it's not even that she's become so successful as a movie actress. Her name is Stephanie Kurtzuba. I guess I should say her full name. That's her artist name. But I feel so inspired by her because of her authenticity as a human and as an artist. Like she always goes for the real, whatever is real in the scene or the song. And she always just really focuses on that and the truth of it. And she's never trying to like pull the wool over your eyes or fool you into thinking she's feeling something. She just goes there, and then she lets you choose how to feel, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I always used to watch her do that in Billy Elliot, even with like, if she had like a short scene, she would always do that. And I would always just be like, oh, I want to be an actress like that. And then off stage, she would be super, she was never like trying to impress anyone. Like she just always would be like, hey, I'm your buddy, what's up? Like, you know what I mean? Like she like, and even with like the directors, like we'd have like a director come or an associate come, and I'd be like, I have to do everything right. And she'd be like, hey, what's up? So blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, you're so real. I'm going to do something wrong, you know? Just I'd say like her, because she's so good at being herself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Just everybody, you know, in the company of Frozen, like inspires me every day because of the hard work that they put into making the magic happen every day. And
it's, that whole cast is fabulous. Loved watching y'all for like 2 months. Loved it. And if you could revive any Broadway show that's closed too early, whether you've been in it or not, what show would it be?
Oh gosh, this is a hard one. I love so many old ones.
I've gotten a lot of Parade recently.
Parade's a good one. Oh gosh, let me think for a second. Because I've been in New York for so long that most of them have been revived now. Gosh, I don't know. Because I want to say Fiddler, but they just did it. I want to say My Fair Lady, but they just, you know what I mean? Like I want to say music, but it's about to happen. Like I want to say like a lot of like the really old classics that I like really think are great. I don't know. Now I can't say Parade.
Oh, you could.
I'll say Singing in the Rain.
Oh, yeah. Yes. I'd be down.
I love that one. Yeah.
I'm down for that.
I've never done that show, but I love the movie.
I feel like you'd be really good in that show.
Thank you.
Let's make it happen.
Thank you. I'd be an umbrella in that show. I love that show.
I like manifesting stuff, so we're manifesting it right now. It's gonna
perfect.
You're gonna be in it when it's thanks. So, and what would be your dream role?
Oh, I knew this was coming. I was warned today that this was coming. I was chatting with my boyfriend. I was like, "Can I have an interview?" He's like, "What's your dream role?" I was like, "Oh, that's a hard question." Not to take it back to Sound of Music, but I'd love to play Maria, and I'm probably getting a little old for it now, but I never played Maria. I got to play Liesel years ago, but I never played Maria, and I always wanted to play Maria. in Sound of Music, although, maybe a bigger theater. But
Ow!
and also like The Baker's Wife or The Witch in Into the Woods.
Ooh.
I really liked, and I know they're super different parts, but when I was a kid, I always wanted to play the witch, and then I played Cinderella in high school, and then I played Jack's mother in college, but I've never played the Baker's Wife. And then I've just recently gone, the witch really is the role though, because it's so vulnerable and yet, scary and ugly, but not, but like that, like human ugliness that like we all have,
Yeah.
So I'll say those.
I
I
could
have a lot, probably.
Maria.
Huh?
I could see you as Maria.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
I love Sound of Music, and I
fun music.
like watching it as an adult is totally different than watching it as a kid, honestly. I was watching it at the beginning.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't remember that like this and this and this happened. It's so like dark and stuff too.
It is. You don't realize when you're a kid.
Yeah.
It's very historically poignant. I read this amazing book a year or two ago. It's by Charmian Carr, and it's called Forever Liesel, and it's about her experience of filming the movie. And she plays Liesel, and in the movie, and she's now passed away, which is so sad. But it's such a great book. It's got some really fun like snippets and trivia if you're interested in reading anything like that. And the beginning of each chapter has like a letter from a fan and how the movie has changed their life.
I love that so much.
Isn't that cool?
Okay, I'm checking that out because that resonates with my family real closely, so I have to check that out.
It's so good.
And what's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on the stage? I love these stories.
Okay, I cried. I didn't think it was funny at the time, but it's funny now. I was doing Crazy for You at Main State Music Theater, and I was in the ensemble, and I was coming out in the finale, like the finale where all the showgirls just like walk around, right? And my headdress is like 5 feet tall, and I'm wearing like a unitard with rhinestone bikini over it. Like I'm supposed to look like I'm naked basically, but I'm not. And I'm in like high heels, and I had to miss a spacing rehearsal because they went on overtime, and me and the other equity actress, they couldn't call us because they didn't have it in the budget to pay us for that extra hour. But they were like, well, it's just walking around, so it'll be fine. But the first preview, because I wasn't sure, I went a little bit too far upstage, and I felt a curtain coming down, and it went on my headdress, and I'm like barely wearing anything, and the curtain went on my headdress, and I started to tip back, and I tipped back some more, and I didn't fall, but I went like this with the curtain, and I ended up upstage with the curtain, and the girl playing Polly was like, Natalie, oh my gosh. And I was like, and I started crying, and I skipped across because I was so upset. And I went to my quick change for the bows, and I came out for bows, and I just started bawling because I was so embarrassed. And my friend came over, and like everyone was like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, ooh, and she started like taking my pin curls out because she could tell I was so upset. Now it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I was like, but like just the curtain just.
Yeah, of course they're like mortifying at the time, but it's like at a certain like after a certain amount of like time passes, it's like, oh, that's funny. Yeah.
I'd say that was probably the funniest thing that ever happened to me on stage. Just the curtain taking me down with my headdress.
That's one of my favorite questions to ask because there's so many stories you never expect.
Yeah, so many.
So
oh my
many.
Gosh.
And this industry is so tough, and especially during auditions and stuff. How do you work on self-confidence?
I would say as far as like the competitiveness of the industry, I always find that I'm most confident if I'm just being myself because I remind myself that like no one else is going to be as good at being myself as I am. And if I'm trying to be someone else, that's usually when I start to feel insecure. So I would say just like lean into everything about you, your quirks, your flaws, the things that make you different, because that will give you confidence and you'll end up in the right place.
Yes, I love that. I love that answer. It's so hard to it's just like in anything right now to work on self-confidence, and I feel like people need to hear like the answer to how.
Yeah, you are amazing as you are. Like we all are so different, and we're so interesting. And I think don't try to be like someone else. Like don't try to be more boring. Just be you.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing to do, but
it's not. It's a constant work in progress, but we try. And what's the first thing you're going to do once quarantine ends?
Go see a show or go to a dance class.
Yes. Have you been doing like dance classes over Zoom and all? Because I know that stuff like that happens.
Oh yeah. I've been doing a fair amount of that. It's wonderful. It's not the same.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful. Yeah.
But you get to like see people and like dance with people kind of.
Yeah. And I miss the space and the community of it. But also just go see a show. Like I used to just get so annoyed at like the tourists in New York when they would talk loud in the balcony or like, their phones would go off, and now I'm like,
I want that.
Fine. At least it means I'm there,
Yeah. Or when they're chewing too loud and stuff behind you and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
The rappers. All the sound effects in the theater. We love them. And speaking of live theater, how do you think live theater will be different when it's able to come back?
I don't know. I do think I've seen a lot of articles about like limited seating. I expect temperature checks for a while. I think, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I think that will be different. I think people might be really more joyful than usual for a while, because I think theater makes people happy anyway, but I think after living without it for so long, I feel and I hope that people are just so grateful to be back. I don't know. That's how I'm going to feel anyway. I'm just going to be like, this is so wonderful. How lucky are we that we get to be here?
Yeah.
And I always feel that to an extent, but this is different because, like I've gone through like dry spells in my career where I'm like so sad because I'm not doing a show, right? Or I didn't have an audition go the way I want. But like, there was always a feeling of like, but there's always tomorrow and someone's doing a show over there and someone booked the role and I could go see a show and cheer myself up. And like, that's not even, you know what I mean? It's like
you're watching Broadway HD, but it's not the same.
It's not the same. But yeah, I think it will be different. I think people will be more careful about coming and about, the rules that equity has made alone of just like social distancing and all that stuff. I don't know. I've heard of like some shows like not having intermissions anymore.
Oh.
Or serving refreshments in like a paper cup instead of a souvenir cup. I've heard of like all these like random changes. I don't know.
The no intermission would be interesting.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder how that's gonna work. I mean, with 90-minute shows like 6, it will work, but
yeah, with shorter shows it works great, but it's not with all shows.
Yeah, not with the Disney shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And if you have kids, yeah. I don't know.
And the poor parents who have to tell their children to wait until after letting go to go to the bathroom.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. And then lastly, have you been doing anything in quarantine that you'd want to promote or talk about?
Not that I necessarily want to promote, but yeah, I've been doing some teaching, like those camps I told you about. My boyfriend and I are very creative, so we've been working on like a lot of projects of our own. Like we like learned the Moses dance from Singing in the Rain and like videotaped it, and just stuff like that. I'm recording a song for a friend of mine who's a composer for her to promote that. I don't think that she's ready to share it yet, but I'm doing that. I'm just trying to stay. Oh, I'm going back to school. I guess I could tell you about that.
Yeah.
So I really love to write. And I've always kind of had a pipe dream of like being like a fiction writer.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I'm going back to school September 14th and doing an online master's degree in creative writing in September.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's something you would probably have never done if we weren't stuck inside.
No,
right?
never. I mean, like I wrote a novel during Matilda, and now I've written some semblance of one during quarantine, but I've never like studied it, and that's what I think I was feeling when I was writing this novel. I was like, I think it's a really great idea, but I feel like my execution could be better. So
Interesting. I love
will
that.
be able to continue when I'm on the road. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Would writing for the stage be a goal too?
yeah. I mean, my boyfriend and I have written a musical. I'm certainly interested in writing plays. I think I'm more interested in writing novels though, just because it's like always been a hobby of mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just branching out a little bit.
And
want to be productive.
if like parents of kids in theater are listening, where can they find out how to get involved in classes you teach?
Oh yeah, I actually have been teaching through a company called A Class Act NY. So they can check that out. It's not always just me. Like they have like amazing artists teach for them, but I often teach for them off and on. Yeah, I think they have a website, and I think it's just aclassactny.com.
Nice.
Yeah.
And to keep up with you, where can they follow you on social media?
Yeah, Instagram, my handle's Nat Wisdom. So pretty close to my name.
Yeah.
My headshot doesn't look like this anymore because I've let my roots grow out, but it's a little blonder, a little shorter. Yeah, Nat Wisdom. I'm not on Twitter or anything like that, but yeah.
Instagram is where it's
Instagram is public, so go ahead and follow me. I don't post very often, but sometimes I get on there. I'm better when the show is running, but
yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for talking to me.
Thank you so much, Becca. This was so fun.
Of course. I'm glad that you got to come on, and I mean, all these interviews are cheering me up during quarantine. It's the best. It's amazing.
It's such a great idea. It's so cool. I love it.
Thanks for watching this episode of Backstage with Becca B. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Becca B Talks TV. Or for more exclusive content from this interview and more, you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Backstage with Becca B. Make sure to subscribe to my channel and like this video, or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give me a 5-star rating. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!